Everybody.
Good evening.
I welcome all of you to this second annual day celebration of Philosophy Family. This is an academic celebration. I say this is an academic celebration because even today we are having the talks of Professor D.N. Tiwari sir and Professor Pannerselvam sir. But the difference is today we'll be not having an interactive session after the talks. Today, philosophy family could progress because of the blessings and good wishes of the senior professors of the state and the nation, like Professor Prafulla Mahapatra sir, Professor Saroj Mahanti sir, Professor Ranjit Ghosh sir, Professor Padigrai sir, Professor Pannerselvam sir, Professor D.N. Tiwari sir, and many others. So we are really happy that we could travel these 2 years with lot of success, lot of wishes, and lot of learning. I would like to say. May I remind you all that in the year 2020, when the entire world was suffering from COVID-19 crisis, Professor Pramod Kumar Das has made the initiative that in order to reach the students, we should have a forum where we can deliver our lectures to the students for the benefit of the students, because students are idle at home, and when no classes are there, they will not be doing anything. So with that initiative, with that objective, Philosophy Family was born, and those days we used to have webinars on all days. So, but let me tell you that Philosophy Family was born on the 27th of July 2020, and the first lecture was delivered by our Professor, loving Professor P.K. Mahapatra sir, who addressed on the topic entitled Applied Ethics and Indian Theory of Morals. And with that lecture, we have not moved back, we have not seen back. We are progressing day by day, and with time, many new people across the country and and even from abroad have joined Philosophy Family, and they are delivering their talks. And in these 2 years, Philosophy Family could invite scholars and have webinars. If I remember it well, we have conducted 365 webinars in these 2 years. And one more thing I should say, that we could conduct these webinars without a single pie being spent. So everything was free, because even the professors who used to come here to deliver talks, they have wholeheartedly come, they have delivered the talks, and everything we could conduct because of the blessings of the senior professors across the nation. So we are celebrating the second annual day, and on this day, as I said, this is an academic celebration. We have the talks by Professor D.N. Tiwari sir and Pannerselvam sir, and today we will be the second edited volume of Philosophy Family entitled Philosophical Perspectives, that would be released by Professor Prafulla Kumar Mahapatra sir, S.K. Mahanti sir, S.C. Panigrai sir, D.N. Tiwari sir, and Pannerselvam sir. So we'll be having it a later time, but I think we should go on with the lecture by the chief guest first, and then we'll have a break for the release of the edited volume, and then we'll have the talk by Professor Pannerselvam. So today we are not having very long talks, rather the talks would be about 20-25 minutes or 30 minutes. So with this, may I don't to introduce Professor D.N. Tiwari sir or Professor Pannerselvam sir, because they are well known throughout the nation and even abroad. So yeah, we just seek their blessings. So with these words, may I now request Professor D.N. Tiwari sir, our chief guest, today to address his lecture on the title Philosophy Today and Tomorrow. Professor D.N. Tiwari sir. Professor Pannerselvam sir would also be delivering on the same title, but after Professor D.N. Tiwari sir completes his lecture, and we'll be having a break for the release of our second edited volume, Philosophical Perspective. Over to Professor D.N. Tiwari sir for his lecture. Sir, namaskar sir. Welcome sir.
Namaste.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Professor Om Narayan Rao ji. Yeah, I'm happy, very happy to see great scholars to whom I used to read and listen when I was a student. But my student life is not so little. Still, I am a student, and I used to learn something from them. Professor Praful Kumar Mahapatra ji, Saroj Mohanty ji, Professor Srinivas ji, my senior and friend, Professor Pannerselvam sahab. Perhaps there might be S.C. Panigrahi ji, Ranjit Ghosh ji is here, Shambhasi Prasad ji, and so many my young and old friends are there. So I am thankful to Professor Pramod Kumar Das ji and Om Narayan ji for inviting me to the second anniversary of the philosophy family. Really, it's a matter of happiness that these, through the philosophy family, Professor Das and K. Om Narayan are continuing the spirit of philosophical thinking in the country, and thus promoting the cause of philosophy, which is very useful for us and for coming generation too. I am very much thankful to Pramod Kumar Das ji and Om Narayan ji and his team. So the topic for my lecture today, my address today, is philosophy yesterday, today and future. Today and future. Very difficult because we have a long history of philosophical thinking. So very difficult to identify the particular problems which I can see what was the position in the past, what is present, and I can speculate into the future, what will be the future of philosophy. But you know, this is fact, and you all are great scholars. You know that since the beginning, the problem of philosophy was identified. The philosophers tried to identify the problem. But the problem, and you know, the problem is not problem for problem's sake. It is for a thinking mind, a rational being, a being that has a philosophical bent of rationality or mind. You can be a rational, but you cannot be having a rational bent of mind, philosophical bent of mind. So, in the very beginning, you see, they identified the problem as search for pleasure, happiness, with a distinction that, with a difference that pleasure is concerned with the physical feelings when the body is in agreeable circumstances or positive circumstances to some other, but that is very temporary. Therefore, happiness come into light it was more permanent than pleasure, because it was related to the mental state, agreeable circumstances. When the agreeable circumstances are there, the pleasure is transformed as happiness. But this was for me a part of searching the truth of life. And truth of life is not such that I can identify as happiness, as knowledge, as idea, or as this or that. Each and every part of life, there, if you think about the searching the truth of your body, your philosophy is different. If you are trying to search into the mind, rationality, your philosophy will be different, your truth will be different. If you are searching the truth of conflicts, your truth is different. So truth differs according to your search. But when you realize, when you come with your investigation to a truth about any aspect of life, about any truth, then you think that this truth is really uncontradicted and useful, a new finding that will be that should be communicated to others. Why? Because of the fact that the truth disclosure must be there, truth should be known to others also. And so in the search of truth, they investigated, they expressed their views about their investigation, and philosophy came into being. So many philosophies came in the chain of refuting the predecessors' thoughts and coming to the succeeding thoughts. So philosophy is now becoming subtle. So from the search of happiness, it shifted to the search of truth, and now the search is started into the investigating into the truth. What is truth? Is it material? Is it spiritual? What is truth? Some find it as rationality or ideas as truth. Some find that truth is transcendental to our mind and all that. But some come to the conclusion that this truth for a rational being is knowledge. So whether knowledge is rational or it is based on experience, that was also in the history as the specific moments of rationalism and empiricism. But I find that there was great discussion about the empiricism and rationalism, but later the scientific temper of the philosophers declared that there is no need of philosophy. What philosophy can do about the knowledge? About the knowledge, we have the only, it is our occupation to search into the knowledge, to observe it, to analyze it, to experiment it, and to accept it, to confirm it. Philosophers cannot do it because they have no instrument, they have no experiment, and they can speculate only. So that may serve as a hypothesis, but not as a theory, as a confirmed theory. And therefore, there is differences of philosophy in the past, also in the present. So great philosophers are there. Professor Mohanty, and Mahapatra ji, Pannerselvam ji, they all have their own philosophy, own way of thinking, and that is very useful for the recent time. But the thing is that we Indians are not evaluating their philosophy, or we are all. It is also our duty to come it up, to make it available to the audience so that they can go through that and they can evaluate it easily. So about the knowledge, so many searches. Is it substance? Vedantins, they accept that yes, knowledge is substance. But Naiyayikas, they refuted it. They said, no, it is a quality of the soul. So it is not a substance. It is a quality. How knowledge is a quality, but Mimamska, they accept that no, knowledge is neither quality nor substance, but it is the karma. It is duty, it is action. It is action. Be the action. And so the Bauddhas, they accept that Sunya. We cannot say anything about the knowledge. Knowledge is Sunya. We cannot describe it. Chatur Kot is Binurmukta. But with this theory, these are ancient theories, and they developed before the Western philosophy, especially Greek philosophy, came into the being. And the Upanishad identified that the knowledge is not only the truth, but it is consciousness. It's not only the existence, but it is consciousness and bliss at the same time. And with that philosophy, the philosophers make the welfare of others as their mission of philosophy. And what system or what idea or theory of thought they provided, the goal was to search into the truth of the reality for the welfare of the fellow beings, of the generations to come. Therefore, what they did devotedly, the purpose was that their thinking was that my thoughts are perpetual and that is not going to last. It is a search of truth. It is truth. And if I express it to know the others, maybe welfare for them, maybe useful for the welfare of them. So in India and in abroad also, I think that even a singer, if he sings something and he thinks that the reality lying in the song must be known to all because it says something true. And with this goal of making perpetual to the knowledge, the philosophers devoted their life in investigating into the truth in different ways: happiness, truth, consciousness, bliss, and etc. The uniqueness of the Advaita Vedanta, especially Professor Pannerselvam is there, he is specified, but others are also there. Professor Saroj Mohanty and Mahapatra, they are also well versed in the Indian trend of thinking. They also know that Vedanta accept that truth, existence, consciousness, and bliss, they are not three different, but the same. If I say existence, the existence is consciousness, that is knowledge. And if I say that is knowledge, the same is bliss, because the bliss is there only in the knowledge. So, but you see, this scientific investigations theories, they say that no, philosophy has no philosophy has no utility in knowing about the knowledge. We are expertise, and we can search into the knowledge by we are having the tools for observation, for analysis, and for experiment. So we accept, we know, and we accept, we confirm the knowledge. So confirm knowledge, the valid knowledge, the true knowledge, only scientific theories can give. But if they are asked, what is the nature of knowledge? What do you know? Do you know the external objects? They are the objects of knowledge, or the ideas are objects of knowledge? What is the consciousness? I think that their observation, the scientific observations, their tools will not work. And therefore, it is genuine to accept that philosophy belongs to the highest knowledge, concerned with the highest truth, and the truth with which scientists do not occupy, only the philosophers occupy. So philosophy has a great concern with the highest knowledge of the truth. That highest knowledge is not only existent, but consciousness and belief as well. It is useful for the welfare of the others and for the well-being of ourselves, if we realize. And if we practice for welfare. Now, this way we are coming to shift into the, philosophers are coming to shift into the knowledge. But another way to approach the philosophical theories or knowledge in the past and in the present and depicting a future, we have to see what sort of thinking we do when we do a philosophical thinking, or when we reflect philosophically to think. So there are very popular theories: subjective thinking philosophy, subjective thinking. Philosophy is objective thinking. But we have seen enough that the objectivists, they refute the subjectivists, that the subjectivists, they cannot justify their knowledge for others. They just speculate into their own reality, and that may be accepted, that may not be acceptable to others because others have some different speculations. So subjective mode of reflecting on is not philosophical. Rather, there must be objectivity in the philosophy as the sciences have, because there is scientificity in sciences, scientific knowledge, and there must be scientific thing, scientific element. Yeah, the philosophical thinking should be also scientific. So this way, objectivists, they think that all the theories, they suffer from psychologism and theory impregnation. And this theory impregnation and psychologism was made the problem for analytic philosophers, Professor Pannerselvam and Srinivasan and all others you are expertise. So but is analytic philosophy coming from the West truly a task of philosophers? So there is a goal. The goal is that if you analyze the language or the concepts, we can come to the clarity and the problem will be removed. So the real problem is not to remove the problem, but to solve the problem and solve it philosophically. So the problem is clarity. And unless your rationality is not free from the captives, impregnations, and their allegiances to, you cannot, your mind cannot think philosophically. Not only that, you cannot have a rational hunger, you cannot have a philosophical hunger. So, you are a philosopher in proportion to the hunger, philosophical hunger, rational hunger. Most of us are doing philosophy. We are teachers. But we have no philosophical hunger. We have no rational hunger. Our minds do not confront with the problem. And we say, we copy something from somewhere and we make ourselves popular as our own theory. But there is only copying from the past, copying from our present, but no originality. In the name of the originality, we are just looking into the social sciences, because here our age is the age of utility. We have forget that there must be truthfulness in the theory, there must be a welfare concept in the theory, welfare aim in the theory, and at the same time, there must be utility of the theories. We have taken just only utility. Oh, the politicians, they are talking about the utility, and therefore, what we are doing must we see, is it of some utility for others or for society? So we are making philosophy as sociology. So to make me Pannerselvam or Pannerselvam Tiwari is not a solution. So philosophy, it is dangerous for philosophy if we are making philosophy as sociology or as commerce or other joke or in the name of philosophy, reflections. So philosophical reflections, they are mostly concerned with what we know. We concentrate on that. We analyze that. And we put into the expression that we know and we concentrate. So this way, our task is to reflect on cognitive beings, the beings which are intelligible. So what beings are intelligible? And the beings which are intelligible can only be known. We do not know the pen, but we know the idea of the pen presented by the word pen. Even if you see, you do not know. You see only the figure and material and all that. But that is not a pen, because unless the pen is not associated with the word pen, you cannot, that will not be reflected in your mind. So isolated from the word pen, you cannot know the pen. So knowledge was approached in the recent era as that belonging to the reflections on the intelligible objects, the objects that the mind can know. Mind cannot know the external objects. Mind can know only the ideas, that figures. And what figures is not different from, not separate from, there the theory came that whether the language and the thought, both are separate. So most of the theories in the West and in India and all the systems, they accepted that yes, mind is original, thought is original, and the language is a tool that is implied when we need to express the thoughts. So thought is original and the language is just a tool. It is the carrier of the, but the problem arises. Can we have any knowledge isolated from the language? I think isolated from language, no imagination, no thinking, no idea is possible. So we have enough sufficient argument to accept that the knowledge and the language both are infused in such a way that to know the language is to know the knowledge. And the knowledge and the language, these are the intelligible beings our mind can know. There is no more room to house all the external things or any external thing in the mind. Our mind can know only the. So our search, our investigation must be concentrated on the intelligible beings, and whether these intelligible beings we can only know. Yes, we reflect on the intelligible beings, but the knowledge and the knowledge of the intelligible beings will make a difference. So the philosophy nowadays in India even is becoming subtler and subtler and becoming more universal, more rational, shifting to the knowledge, shifting to the concentration on the knowledge, understanding the nature of knowledge properly. And moreover, if we deny the language, or if we accept it only as a carrier of the thought, I can ask a question. Okay, this is pen, this is mobile and all that. So they are determined by their material, length, width, color, etc. But what determines the knowledge of the pen, idea of the pen? Only language determines the idea of the pen. So knowledge is determined only by the language, and all knowledge is determined only because language infuses that. Isolated from language, no knowledge can be determined. And if there is a knowledge, that is a determinate knowledge. And if there is a determinate knowledge, and it is expressed in the mind flashes it. That is a veridical knowledge. And all other proofs, evidences, instances, they are just means proofs. They are just means to prove the verity of knowledge expressed in the mind by language through their measures. For example, you see, the measure is, if there is a reference, what I am saying is valid. But moreover, when we discuss so many times, hours and hours, we understand. And then if I ask that give some proof, you are giving the proof. But you are not showing some reference outside. This means that you try to show the reference outside of some expression, some knowledge, only to prove the verity of knowledge that is expressed in your mind. That is the intelligible being. You want to show that there is a corresponding reference in the empirical world of the intelligible being, that is idea in the mind. So now the time has come that you have to accept the existence of ideas. So now the philosophy, the language is not like water to fish, but it is like the gills of the fish. Without language, knowledge cannot be expressed. Knowledge cannot be possible. It will cease to be knowledge, isolated from language. So now a great discussion about relation also there. Nayayicans talk about so many relations. In every their contact six kinds of sensory contacts for sensual perception. Despite that, sanjog, samvay, and so many types of samvay or samvay, they accept. Others accept that relation is identity. More theories, they accept that relation of identity. But the thing is that if relation is identity relation, what will be the difference? So only by accepting the identity as relation, you cannot explain the difference. And if you accept the difference relation, you cannot interpret the identity. Likewise, samvay and sanjog, they are also to the extent of substance and quality. But other categories of substances, they do not cover about their relation. But if there is a reference, if there is a referent, there must be relation. If there is a substance and there is a that is prameya and avideya, so there must be relation. But they have no response to the problem of relation about other substances like samvay, bises, and abhav. Because samvay, asamvay, and other relations they accept is applicable to only substance and qualities, not to all sort of categories, substances, all sort of categories. But we do with language. We are philosophers. Knowledge is just what is expressed in language. You may say that you are a very great philosopher, but I don't have nothing to do. I do not have anything to do with that. Whatever you will express to me, on that basis, I will evaluate you as a philosopher, as a great knowledge, as a knowledgeous person, as a wise man. So we are philosophers, we are concerned with expressions. What you express tells me what is the level of, are you a philosopher? So the relation between the meaning, the expressions expressed and the expression, what is that? And after a long discussion, I have come to realize that the natural fitness of expression is the relation between the expression and the expressed, between the signified and the signifier. Because if some sentence is not naturally fit to express its meaning, we cannot understand. But if that is naturally fit, we understand. But when we try to find out the relation between the two, we can say that it is the fitness of the expression by which it expresses the expressed. So this way, the main problems from the ancient time to the latest modern time, we have been thinking about language, reality, and shifting to the truth, knowledge, bliss, and then on language, meaning, and their relation. Now at our time, it is very important, and I'm happy that Professor Pannerselvam is here, and I am here to listen him also. Purposely, I have joined here to listen him. So, it is that why philosophy is deviated from its proper task? Why it is by most of the teachers who supervise the theses is turning towards sociology, political thoughts, political philosophy. And the main task of reflecting over the objects that we know is missing from the scene. I have a hope, positive hope, that with your effort and you, the greatest philosophers, are here, we will agree to find out that philosophical reflection should center to the knowledge, higher knowledge, because of that, philosophy can be distinguished from the sociological knowledge, medical knowledge, engineering knowledge, medical knowledge, and their philosophies. So there is a question of identity at present about philosophy. And in the name of utility, we are doing sociology, political science, and music, and other things, yoga, and even not going philosophically to those problems also. Just we copy from the persons, scholars belonging to those proper disciplines, and we are submitting it to philosophy. Oh, I have done work on philosophy of music, I have done work philosophy of political science, social philosophy, I am working like that. So there is a question of existence of philosophical reflections, to distinguish philosophical reflection from others. And my submission is that we can distinguish it only when we concentrate our reflections to what we know, and would take that the knowledge of what we know and the knowledge we know, they are different, because knowledge as such is not the object of any other knowledge. But the object of knowledge, whether it is external object or it is intelligible object, is of the character of, is having the character of otherness. It can be the object in the other expressions or in other knowledge also, objects of knowledge. But the knowledge itself is not the object of knowledge. So the object of knowledge and the knowledge of the object of knowledge, there is difference. So we should, that is the way I have just suggested, we should concentrate on this way also. And I think that with this thinking, philosophy will occupy its proper object of thinking and proper field of reflecting philosophically. With these words, I am thankful to you all for listening me so patiently. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Professor Tiwari sir, for sharing your valuable thoughts and ideas. Well, there will be no synopsis, there will be no interaction session for the talks today. Thank you so much, sir. Well, I should also once again thank all the professors, researchers, scholars, and students for joining this event. Thank you all. Now it's time actually to release the second edited volume of Philosophy Family entitled Philosophical Perspectives. We have with us Professor P.K. Mahapatra sir, Professor Saroj Kumar Mahanti sir, Professor D.N. Tiwari sir, Professor Pannerselvam sir, and I request them to release this edited book, Philosophy Family. Well, actually, there was a lot of problems in releasing the second issue because of the printer who made a lot of problems. And despite all this, we could only get this book 2 days back. And that being the reason, we could not send to the professors for releasing this. Well, we have sent the soft copy to them, just like if they can show, if they can put on the videos on and show the soft copy, I mean the mobile, the WhatsApp copy, and release this book, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Sir, please please declare this book to have been released by you, sir, so that we can, so that this book can then reach to other participants. Sir. Sir, please release this book, sir. Professor P.K. Mahapatra, sir, Professor Suroj Mahanti, sir, Professor Pannerselvam, sir, and Tiwari, sir. Well, just thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Professor Mahapatra, sir.
Okay, the book is released. We are yet to see the copy in physically, but I'm sure it will be all right. Thanks to the continuous efforts of Team Om Narayan Rao and Pramod Kumar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, professors.
Great moment to release these volumes, useful for the world of philosophy, scholars for philosophy, and I think that it will be welcomed with its release by the scholars. So nice, Professor Pannerselvam, sir.
I'm very happy to release this very interesting volume. I saw the contents of this book, and I really appreciate the effort taken by Professor Dash as well as Professor Narayan Rao and other friends, and the contributors also, because they have written some very interesting articles. The topics are very fascinating. So I take this opportunity to release this book, and I congratulate the philosophy family for doing this wonderful job. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let me also join with all of you together in releasing this book. Tiwari and Prof.
So in the group we have already seen, sir. So it was posted. Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
it was posted. So nice to see.
So you must have seen that book.
We can purchase it.
Straight, but I get this. Thank you for.
Because it is a collection of scholarly papers by so much philosophers.
Releasing
So
this book.
it would be a good addition to our library.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
Thank you so much, sirs. Well, this book has been released. Thank you so much. Very soon we'll be sending a copy of this book, and also a copy of the earlier book, Philosophical Perspectives, to those whom I could not say in the first volume. So we'll be sending this volume, say, to those whom I could not send Philosophical Reflections, the first volume, along with Philosophical Perspectives, the second volume. But to those whom I have sent Philosophical Reflections, I'll be sending the second edited volume very soon. So thank you for releasing this book, and for your nice words. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Now I request Professor Pannerselvam, sir, to have his talk. So I once again thank all the participants, senior professors. I should even thank Professor Sambashiva Prasad, sir, who has graced this occasion, and he is there with us, and also all professors, senior professors who are connected with us. So thank you, thanking all. We should move to Professor Pannerselvam, sir. Yes, even Indu Kanduri madam, she has introduced a number of philosophers to this family. So with these words, let us move to Professor Pannerselvam, sir, for his.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Professor Narayan Rao ji. Respected Professor Pramod Dash, Professor Narayan Rao, Professor Maharana, who are mainly responsible for this very important group called the Philosophy Family. And I am very happy to see the senior most Professor Mahapatra ji, Professor Saroj Mohanty, Professor T.N. Tiwari ji, Professor Seshagiri sir was also there, Professor Roma Wang, and many others. Also Professor Ranjit Ghosh, Professor Sambasiva Prasad, Dr. Srinivasan, Professor Badri, Professor Sushinji, Professor Prashant Shukla, Amit Valmiki and many others. And this is a happy occasion to celebrate for the main reason that the philosophy family could successfully conduct the program without any financial support, all of us know. But in spite of that, they were able to do this program successfully for the past 2 years. And not only that, they were able to bring out 2 volumes, which are very fascinating. And this shows the effort made by Professor Dash as well as Professor Om Narayan Rao and then Professor Maharana. And I congratulate them for making this effort. And we are all with you, Professors, and whatever help you need, we will be very happy to do, because you are doing everything for the sake of younger generation for philosophy, that is young students and young scholars of philosophy. So we congratulate you and we greet you very much on this second annual day celebration. Now, I'll be very brief because after listening to my good friend Professor D.N. Tiwari, I feel that I have very little to say because he has given a very beautiful approach to both language and reality. And towards the end of my talk, I would make some observation with regard to his approach, because this is also closely connected to my approach. But prior to that, I would like to see the dynamics of the philosophical method. When I say the dynamics of philosophical method, the question that comes to one's mind is, philosophy for what? Why should we do philosophy? What is the need for philosophy? I would say philosophy is for freedom, philosophy is for critical thinking, and philosophy is needed for exercising freedom in and through reflection. And philosophy is needed for the principles of knowing how to be. And finally, philosophy could be used as a method, as a procedure, and as teaching. So this question, namely philosophy for what, or what do we mean with philosophy, involves these issues, and this is how I philosophize. In the year 1953, UNESCO explained the role of philosophy as follows. It said that there is a fundamental awareness among the people of the world to understand the problems of science and culture through philosophical discourse. I think this is a very, very significant point, because this clearly shows that philosophers has to support, or say they have to give a guidance to natural science or natural scientists. So this statement of UNESCO, which came in the year 1953, clearly shows that there should be a unity, though not unity, there should be a proper understanding between science and philosophy. And also we must understand the fact that philosophy has changed. It has opened itself up to the world and to other disciplines. What I'm trying to say here is that we are no more compartmentalized. Philosophy is interdisciplinary approach. That is the reason why in philosophy we can see different approaches. For example, Amit Valmiki would talk about philosophy and film. Somebody would talk about philosophy and social sciences, how both are related. And somebody who can speak on philosophy of sports. So there is always an interdisciplinary approach that is involved in philosophical discourse. This, I would say, is a major contribution of philosophy for the 20th century. So what I'm trying to say is that philosophy has taken different dimension, and one of the dimensions is that it is interdisciplinary. No more we can argue that I cannot interact with sociologists. I cannot interact with anthropologists. No. So the subject barriers are broken, and the credit, I would say, mainly go to the philosopher, because he is the one who could interact with the other disciplines. And one example I would like to give is Professor Habermas, who basically was a sociologist. In his earlier writings. You could see a sociological approach in his own writings. But later, he could show how sociology and philosophy could be talk about some common issues, and how these disciplines, sociology as well as anthropology and philosophy, they can converge at a particular point. So it is very clear from Habermas or from any contemporary philosophers of the West as well as East that we should have an interdisciplinary approach. Now the question is, what should be the task of philosophy for the 21st century, or philosophy for the future? What should be the task of philosophy? I would say, first of all, philosophers should conceptualize, and secondly, they have to formulate the problems. Thirdly, they have to classify the ideas. Fourthly, they have to use logic and dialectics in their method. And finally, the critical thinking. So these are, I have given 5 points. These are the 5 important tasks of a philosopher, or this is what a philosopher should do, according to me, for the 21st century. Now, the last point is very important, the critical thinking or the critical thought, because Professor Dayakrishna would say that all of us are not, though we are, though we claim that we are all philosophers, Dayakrishna would say that all of us are not philosophers. We are all, most of us, according to him, are teachers of philosophy. And he would further say that we don't know, many of us, according to him, we don't know how to philosophize. So the philosophizing is an art. It is an activity. It is a part and parcel of human life. Who can philosophize? A person who has got a critical thinking alone can do that. But most of the time, we teachers of philosophy, Professor Tiwari also has pointed this aspect. Most of us, or most of the time, we as a teachers of philosophy simply repeat what is given in the books, what is stated by so and so, what is already available in the text. So this is how we have been taught. Our ancestors have taught us and our teachers have taught it, and we are repeating the same thing to our younger generation. But where is the critical thought that is involved? That is a question which has to be debated properly, at least for the 21st century. Because we have to examine the issues. It is not simply repeating or what is given by a commentator or by the text or somebody who has authored the text. So philosophizing can take place at different area. For example, at the cultural field, philosophizing can take place. At the existential level, philosophy can take place. At the spiritual level, philosophy can take place. At the therapeutic level, philosophy can take place. And also in the political, social, and intellectual level, we can philosophize. So philosophizing is an art. It is an activity. It is possible. That means you can philosophize provided you develop a critical attitude towards a particular problem. And that is the reason why I think Wittgenstein has talked about, Wittgenstein would say that we can't solve the problem. Instead, we can find out why the problem is arising. If you know the reason for that problem, then it can be easily solved. So this means there is a method of understanding the problem, which is possible only through philosophizing. And of course, there are different ways of putting philosophy into practice. For example, we can have philosophical counseling, which is very well picking up now, because some time back, only psychological counseling was accepted, but now philosophers also participate in counseling. And in fact, in many foreign countries, philosophy counseling is taught as a separate discipline. In India also, we are teaching this subject, and we are writing articles on philosophical counseling. The significance of philosophical counseling is emphasized by our contemporary thinkers. So, when we ask the question how to put philosophy into practice, I would say these are the methods. One is philosophical counseling, and second is philosophical gathering. Philosophical gathering means that we meet often at a particular place and discuss philosophical issues. Then nowadays we conduct number of workshops on philosophy, and also weekly meetings, philosophical forums, and like the philosophers meet which we are having. So all these are helping us to put philosophy into practice. And I think this is very much essential for the 21st century. In fact, we have to take philosophy to the common man also, for which these methods or these procedures are to be followed. Now, also we must understand the fact that philosophy has to take into account the world problems. The world problem in the sense we can't sit somewhere isolating ourselves from the rest of the world, and we can't talk about ivory tower philosophy, not connecting ourselves with the people. So in the 21st century, philosophy has to address the world problems. How is it possible? It is possible through dialogue, and also it is possible through analysis, and also questioning some of the concepts or values which are prevailing in our contemporary society. So this means there should be independent thinking as well as critical reflection. And that should be, I already stated the significance of the interdisciplinary approach, because we no more can compartmentalize ourselves by saying this is my area and nobody can enter into that area. And it is also pointed out by many structuralists as well as post-structuralists that philosophers can interact with other disciplines. One example I would like to quote here, that is Levi-Strauss. Levi-Strauss, all of us know, is a well-known structural anthropologist. He has discussed the significance of structuralism in the context of philosophy. His book talks about how the role of myths and metaphors can change the structure of the world. His book, The Savage Man, for example, is the one which deals with the structuralist understanding of human society. So not only that, in order to develop a human understanding, or in order to have intercultural understanding, it is very much essential to know that philosophers can interact with other disciplines. Whether it is anthropology or sociology or psychology or any other science, philosophers can interact, and they can also interact. The paradigm given by the paradigm shift, we talk about paradigm shift in philosophy of science. Two great scientists, Kuhn as well as Karl Popper, both of them, Karl Popper as well as Kuhn, they have pointed out how philosophy and science can have interaction. So this methodology of science can really help the scientists, and the scientist methodology can really help the philosophers. In fact, late Professor Sundarajan has talked about this in detail by showing how a scientist and a philosopher can interact. This is one aspect which I think has to be developed properly in the 21st century, so that we can have a proper understanding of both science as well as disciplines like anthropology, then sociology, psychology, and other fields of research. Then also we must remember the fact that in Indian philosophical tradition, philosophy is considered as a way of life. It's a way of life which combines theory and practice. Sometime back, Professor Jayan Mohanty has written a very beautiful essay on theory and practice in Indian philosophy, wherein he shows that how Indian philosophical tradition can combine these two aspects. Because in the Western tradition, philosophy is practiced only at the theoretical level. But in Indian tradition, we can see a synthesis between tradition and modernity. Tradition and modernity. Okay, I thought some message Professor Narayana Rao sent. Professor Narayana will tell me when I should stop. Okay,
Carry on.
yeah. So philosophy in Indian tradition as a different approach altogether, because it not only theorizes but also it gives a practical orientation to the problems of human society. That is the reason why now we are talking about the applied philosophy by showing how philosophy can discuss some of the issues. For example, in bioethics, bioethics is one of the very important subjects which is discussed at length in many foreign countries. And bioethics has a close link with the philosophical discourse. Especially you can see how some of our concepts that we have developed in Indian philosophy could easily be applicable to bioethics. So this is something very important in the context of 21st century. And also we must remember the fact that in India, philosophy has three different conceptions at three different periods. For example, philosophy is understood as a rational, critical view of the world. This is the first conception of philosophy. That is, philosophy is seen as a rational and critical and review of the empirical world. And secondly, philosophy as a system of ideas comprising epistemology, metaphysics, and ethics. For example, if we take any system of ancient philosophy in India, we can make this classification. We can see in each and every system of philosophy, in the classical system of Indian philosophy, you can see the epistemology, metaphysics, ethics, etc. So this is one way of understanding philosophy, that is philosophy as a system of ideas. Then third is philosophy as the intuitive network of the views regarding the study of man, nature, and world. Of course, once again, if you go back to Indian tradition, you can see how our classical Indian philosophers have discussed these three important concepts in metaphysics, for example, man, world, and God. Example, very beautiful example can be given from Vishishtadvaita philosophy. So these are the three different conceptions of philosophy. But what is important is that philosophers have been concentrating one aspect of these three concepts and neglect the other. This is a view given by late Professor K. Chachinandamurthy. And Professor Murthy is of the view that philosophers must take into account all the three conceptions of philosophy so that they can have the better vision of themselves as well as the better vision of the world. So also, I feel my way of approaching philosophical problems is something different because I feel that philosophy should have a concern for the downtrodden and the suppressed and the oppressed, the marginalized, and there should be economic and political justice, and there should be participation of all. And we must also discuss the social and environmental problems. These are my four concerns with regard to philosophy. That is, once again, I would like to repeat this. This is philosophy must have a concern for downtrodden and the suppressed and the oppressed and the neglected, the marginalized people in short. Of course, our contemporary philosophers like Swami Vivekananda and Sri Aurobindo have made attempt in this direction. That is the reason why Swami Vivekananda long back said, I do not believe in a religion which cannot wipe out the tears of a widow or which cannot bring a loaf of bread to an orphan's mouth. So there is a concern for the human society. And also philosophers must work for economic and political justice. And also there should be a participation with the community. This is very important. That's why in the beginning itself I said philosophers cannot isolate himself and sit somewhere and do some, armchair philosophy. Then finally, I would say that social and environmental problems are so much disturbing us, and philosophers alone can give a direction. This is my strong conviction. In fact, why I'm so much convinced is that some 20 years back, I am told that there was in one journal which has come from West Bengal, there was one article. I don't remember the title of the journal, but somebody has pointed out that Professor Ranjit Ghosh must be knowing that title of that. It seems, there is one article in that journal. It says, where are the philosophers when we need them? That is the title of the essay. There was a very big environmental crisis in West Bengal sometime back, it seems, some 20 years ago or something like that. So the article has asked for the direction from the philosopher. So I always feel that the social and environmental problems can easily be tackled by philosophers, that too Indian philosophers. That's why when we are talking about now the social environment as well as sustainable development, we are coming back to Indian philosophical tradition, especially the Buddhist as well as Jain tradition and Hindu philosophical discourse. All these three give a proper direction to some of the problems which are facing, which the world is facing now. So the best way of solving this problem is to go back to our own tradition, especially Indian tradition, and see some of the methods which our philosophers have adopted in the ancient past. And we can apply that to some of the burning problems of the society, environmental problems, etc. And we can make an attempt to solve them. And in Indian philosophy, when I think of Indian philosophy, I always think about the uniqueness of Indian philosophy, because I feel that Indian philosophy, according to me, has got four important segments. I would like to use the word segments. What is that? One is they experience centrality. They experience centrality in all our visions for the future. Have been developed by our great rishis and great saints, the Vedic rishis and the Upanishadic sages. They have given a proper direction. So the experience centrality is one of the important segment or aspects of Indian philosophy. Secondly, I always feel that Indian philosophy is goal-oriented value system which has to be cherished and which has to be nourished. And thirdly, there is always a cultural embeddedness which is involved in the context of Indian philosophy, because Indian philosophy and Indian culture can never be separated. One cannot exist without the other. Then finally, I would say that the fourth segment, according to me, is that there is a holistic and integral approach which is very much visible in Indian philosophical tradition. When I say it is a holistic and integrated approach, it means that our philosophers, that is our ancestors, Indian philosophical thinkers, have pointed out that both animate and inanimate form the part of the society. That's what they mean by the integrated approach or a holistic approach. One good example is from Vishishtadvaita. Vishishtadvaita talk about three ultimate realities, all of us know, Chit, Achit and Ishvara. Now, this Achit is matter which is inert, but it is also part and parcel of the three eternal realities, though Vishnu or Ishvara is something supreme. So it clearly shows that the Indian philosophical tradition has a holistic and integrated approach to the reality. This is something remarkable. Of course, later, many of the Western thinkers have also talk about that. One example is Raimundo Panikkar, who also talks about what is known as cosmotheocentric vision, wherein human being, the world, and God, both three are involved. So this uniqueness of Indian philosophy has attracted many of the Western philosophers, because I always feel that, I would like to quote Radhakrishnan here. Professor Sambasva Prasad is very much familiar with Radhakrishnan. So I would like to state that Radhakrishnan, while talking about intellect and intuition, he is of the view that he says that Western philosophical thinking is more or less intellectual in nature. Now, this is how he distinguishes Indian philosophy from Western philosophy. He says Western philosophical discourse primarily is based on intellectual approach, whereas in India, that is Indian philosophical discourse, it is intuitive in nature. It comes from the anubhava or experience of the saints and sages or the philosophers. So this is very much essential, and I'll conclude within 5 minutes. My last question is, what is the philosophy that is needed for the 21st century? Because quite often it is said there is no creativity in Indian philosophy, especially in contemporary period. All these are not acceptable, for the main reason that our Indian philosophers have contributed substantially in the contemporary period. For example, Professor Mahapatra ji is here. His contribution into philosophy is something remarkable. And there are many others. For example, here I would like to quote Professor Daya Krishna, Professor D.P. Chattopadhyaya, Subhijibin Bhattacharya, Professor Rajendra Prasad, Professor Barlinge, and many others, Professor Suresh Chandra, and many others. So, Professor R. Balasubramaniam, T.R.V. Murthy, Professor Sajjananda Murthy, then T.M.P. Mahadevan, and many others. All these philosophers have given a new methodology for understanding philosophical discourse, at the same time showing their concern for the human society. So I would not accept the statement made by, because since there is no time, I am not extending my argument. There are some scholars, then some thinkers who argued that there is no creativity in Indian philosophy and there is no creativity of contemporary Indian philosophers and all that, which cannot be accepted, because if you read the writings of our contemporary thinkers whom I mentioned just now, it is very clear they made a very significant contribution for the upliftment of the poor, and also concerning problems of philosophy, how philosophical problems could be solved. They're given a new direction. One example I would like to quote here is Professor Subhijibin Bhattacharya, a great scholar of our period, and he is the one who could connect Navya with the mathematical logic. Similarly, Professor Balasubramaniam could use the phenomenological method in understanding Advaita Vedanta. And many others. For Jain Mohanty has made use of phenomenological understanding for understanding Advaita and other systems of philosophy. And I can quote number of authors who could show a new direction to philosophy. So there is a lot of creativity which is very much available in Indian tradition, which has to be accepted in this juncture. And I would quote one quotation from Shankara. It is very important. So I quote this quotation. Shankara says, one who does not know the tradition, even if he is well versed in all the sciences, is to be ignored as a fool. This quotation of Acharya Shankara very clearly shows that one cannot give up one's own tradition. Now, actually, I would say that in today, India swings between the blind adherence of our old customs on the one side and a slavish imitation of foreign ways. But India should understand that we will not be benefited by either of these. Why? Because in one understanding, that is, if we simply follow the old customs without questioning them, there cannot be any progress. And similarly, if we simply depend on the foreign culture with a slavish mentality, imitating the West, then also there will not be any progress. So it is very much essential that true culture must emerge from within, which means that the culture and the values which we follow should be our own. So it should be homegrown. This is what is important. And many of us, while doing philosophy, fail to understand the fact that it is very much essential for us to depend on our own tradition, because most of the time we depend on the Western tradition. And the best example that is available is some of us, of course, I will also do the mistake. Most of the time we write on Western philosophy, but in the West, we should know the fact that in the West, nobody who writes on Western philosophy is not appreciated. Of course, there are very few exceptions, because they think that they know everything. They are expert in that. In fact, I had some encounters with some of the foreign professors who think that we cannot understand, Indians cannot understand Wittgenstein or Habermas or anybody, because they say that you are culturally different and also you don't know the language, namely German language. Anyhow, that's a different issue altogether. But so it is very much essential to understand the fact that what type of philosophy we should practice. What is a philosophy for tomorrow? This is a very important question. And I would say that it takes us to the question: what type of philosophy is needed now? What is a urgent philosophy? I would say, which is needed immediately. We have to practice that. Whether first of all, one has to be rooted in the tradition, and secondly, one must develop one's own thinking by taking into account the values which are available, which are given to us by our ancestors. Now, Professor K.C. Bhattacharya's very interesting essay is Swaraj in Ideas, wherein he makes a distinction between cultural subjection and cultural assimilation. And he would say in that essay, which is published in Vishnu Bharati University Journal, and it is said, he says, that we must be in a position to think in our own concepts. But most of the time we depend on foreign ideas or foreign concepts and we neglect our own thinking. But it doesn't mean that we should simply accept what is given to us. Here I would like to quote Professor J.N. Mohanty, very interesting quotation. For the sake of students, I am reading this. There must be many, this is from Jane Mohanty, there must be many things, those that are for us dead, right? And only of antiquarian interest. Some again, whose interest is only cultural but not philosophical. Now, this quotation of Jane Mohanty clearly shows that it is not the case that we have to simply accept what is given to us all the time. So here, actually, I would like to make a distinction between tradition on the one side and orthodoxy on the other, right? Tradition is that which helps us to preserve our own values. That is very much essential. But orthodoxy is something, the values which may not be needed, which may not be acceptable at this juncture. Here I would like to quote Habermas, for example. Habermas talks about two kinds of human existence. One is the life world, and another is system. By system, he says that it is something structured and something it is given to us, something it is thrown on us. We have to simply accept that without questioning that. And he says we will not be benefited by this methodology. Whereas the other one, the life world, is something wherein you can make certain modifications or changes according to the situation and according to the need of the hour. So some modification or some amendments can be made with regard to the tradition which we have inherited, so that we can make the tradition more richer, and there is no end to it. So this means this methodology, which is practice which is available in Indian tradition, has to be celebrated. That is, this tradition has to be celebrated. And when we think of Western philosophy, of course, we are fond of talking about the phenomenological method or the analytical method, because there are very great thinkers in India like Professor Ganeshwar Mishra and Professor G.C. Nayak, who made an attempt to understand Advaita or Buddhism from the standpoint of analytical philosophy. And similarly, there are thinkers like Jain Mohanty and also Professor R. Balasubramanian and many others have made use of Husserl's phenomenological method to understand Advaita. So there are different methods which are available in Indian tradition. Our system or our ancient philosophical tradition gives a scope for understanding the Western philosophy through our own method or methodology. This means what I'm trying to say in short is that some of the methods which are available in the West are not alien to this country. Because the 20th century, of course, has given a very proper direction to philosophy by developing analytical school or the continental philosophy, etc. But some of the aspects are very much available in Indian tradition. Of course, this does not mean that whatever the Western philosophers have said is already there in Indian tradition. No, I am not making that claim. But what I'm trying to say is, celebrate, no doubt, it is very much essential for us to celebrate the Western philosophy, Western philosophical tools or ideas. But at the same time, please read our own system deeply, so that you can see some of the elements of these, the so-called method, which are available in the West, can be seen in Indian tradition also. So, which means our tradition, our ancient philosophical tradition, Indian philosophical tradition, contains everything. And this is a high time for us to go back to our tradition and see the significance of it. But most of the time we don't do that. Why? Because we are quite often guided by the metaphysics. I'm not anti-metaphysician, but at the same time, I would like to say that we have overdone metaphysics in Indian tradition. If you read, take any PhD thesis, either it will be on moksha or it is on Atman or it is Brahman. A new methodology is not many, at least, not many new methodology are not emerging in Indian context, especially in PhD thesis or even in books when they publish. Why it is so many? Because all the time, this is my argument. I may be wrong also. Professor Tiwari must correct me if I am wrong. Most of the time, we are doing only metaphysics, but there is also other side of Indian philosophy, namely epistemology and logic. And there are great thinkers like Sri Harsha and then Udayana and many others whose works have not been taken seriously. One example I would like to give here is the Gettier problem, the so-called Gettier problem, which has emerged as a very important contemporary epistemological problem in the West in the year 1963. When Gettier wrote a 3-page article, it made a tremendous impact on philosophers, and philosophers have been writing on this, and there is no end to it. It has become a separate discipline. But if you read Indian philosophical tradition, there is we have a similar problem which is available in Indian tradition. For example, Gangesa also talks about such a problem. Such a similar issue, I would say. In fact, Gettier problem has not been solved because there is an example, counter-example, and there is an argument, counter-argument, and it goes on forever. But Gangesa has made an attempt to to solve this problem to some extent. And Professor Jayan Mohanty has detailed work on this. So what I'm trying to say is some of the methods which are available in the West is very much available or very much present in Indian tradition. Only thing is we must have an open mind, or we must have a good knowledge in order to look into the epistemology or the logical side of Indian philosophy, which is so rich. So this is something very important, and I would like to conclude by raising some of the very important issues with regard to Professor Tiwari ji's very wonderful talk. Very beautifully he talked about thought and language. I was very fascinated. Of course, he's a linguistic philosopher, no doubt. And he has shown how language and thought are interrelated, and how it is the consciousness has been playing a very important role in language, reality, and thought. And also he has talked about very beautifully the distinction between objectivity and subjectivity. And in science, normally it is said in science, objectivity is taking an upper hand. But Richard Rorty would question this approach of the scientists by saying, the scientists cannot make a claim that their method has objectivity, whereas philosophy does not have this objectivity. This has been questioned by Richard Rorty. But what I would like to state here is, in Professor Tiwari's wonderful lecture gave me a new way of understanding the analytical philosophy, or the logical relation that exists between language and thought. Here, I would like to, I am not questioning him, but what I would like to state here is that the relation that exists between thought and language, no doubt, is inseparable. In fact, Gadamer would say that the relation is so close that one can replace the other, right? This means at one point of time, language becomes thought and thought becomes language. It is very difficult to make a distinction. In fact, he says one cannot think of thought without language. A thought, to put it in his own words, a thought which is not expressed in language is not a thought at all. So language has become a very important tool of understanding. This is one beautiful point which has been emphasized, and I fully agree with Professor Tiwari sir for making this excellent point. I'm grateful to him. But what I am trying to, tell here is that the language always he has also talked about meaning, but the meaning is something which is constant or which is stable when we talk about the relation that exists between thought and language. This is how language and thought are structured, which means here word, there meaning, right? So when I uttered a word, if it is a meaningful word, then it must denote something. This is how we view the world. So there is a inseparable relation between language and thought. That's fine. But you see, when you are talking about this meaning, there is always a shift in the meaning. Meaning is not something constant. Because I think perhaps Tiwari ji is examining this from the standpoint of the linguistic philosopher or analytical philosopher, where it is said that a word, Jain Mill theory or the contemporary theory also, Wittgenstein understanding, a word denotes something. Okay, that's fine. But this means we are finalizing the meaning of the word by saying that this word should mean this only. This is fine. But it is not something which is constant. There is always a postponement of meaning which is not seen by the linguistic philosophers or the analytical philosophers. There may be various reasons for that. But my view is that when they analyze, for example, if you come to thinkers like Derrida and others, they would say it is very much essential for us to postpone the meaning, right? don't finalize the meaning by saying that this is end and the word can mean this thing. In fact, Saussure long back said that many words have changed their meaning in the course of time. So this means there is always, in fact, when he talks about the diachronic and synchronic aspect of language, he shows that how meaning can change. So if meaning can change in this way, then how do we have the relation that exists between thought and language? This is one problem which was disturbing me when I was listening to Professor Tiwari's approach. But he made a very, very significant approach, and I really congratulate him for showing a new direction to some of the philosophical issues. But I feel because I feel that the postmodern understanding is very much essential for knowing the philosophical problem. Because I feel, I may be wrong also once again, I feel are moving towards a postmodern understanding of philosophy, which means it is always, meaning is always fluid, something not static, something not permanent. Now, you might ask me what is the benefit? The benefit is that we can understand the text, or we can understand the statement from a different perspective. So something new will always emerge from the text, or from my neighbor's statement, or from my friend's statement. So something new will emerge, and that I would say is a contribution to philosophy. Of course, for want of time, I'm not elaborating this further. Of course, this is my perspective. I may be wrong also. So with this, I would like to stop. I don't know. I think I have taken a lot of time. Please forgive me for this. But Tiwari-ji, I really enjoyed your talk, and very, very significant point you made. I noted down everything in the point.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Your approach is something remarkable. I just go one step beyond that and see what. Thank you so much. And I also thank senior professors like Professor Mahapatra and Saroja.
Professor, you raised a question about the meaning. So I agree also, but in my own way. And I have written it is published from DK Print World, 2 volumes on dynamics of the language. I have received 2 months ago. And here I have explained different sorts of meaning. A word denotes or conveys, expresses, and the sentences also. So all sort of semantic, synthetic, and cognitive, all the 3 approaches here discussed. I think that you will like to.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, thank you. Yes, sir.
I want to see that this book may be in your hand. Let me send it to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So I thank Professor Narayan Rao-ji, and then Professor Dash and Maharana-ji, Professor Maharana-ji, and other colleagues who have joined this meet. And in fact, this is a very beautiful experience, I should say, to share our thoughts. Sometimes our thoughts may not be up to your mark, but I'm sharing some of my views with, especially I want to share this with young students so that they will also know what is happening outside India, especially the West. And also I want to learn from my senior professors like Tiwari-ji, Professor Mahapatra-ji, Professor Saroj Mohanty-ji, because they are experts. And speaking in front of them always gives me a pleasure, but also I am always afraid to speak in front of them. And I thank once again the organizers, especially our philosophy. This is our family. So I am grateful to Philosophy Family for this wonderful opportunity. I always enjoy, because whenever when they ask me to give a talk, I accept, because they are doing really a committed service, which we have to record. Because taking philosophy to students and young teachers is something remarkable. And they do the work tirelessly. That is something really Dashar and the Maharana and Narayan Rao ji, that service is really remarkable. And without any financial support, this is also another thing which I have to record. And I think with this method, I mean, which they are practicing, we can take philosophy to all young students and young teachers. Thank you very much.